Hey everyone, welcome back to The Sky is the Limit. Hi, I'm Tristan. If you don't know me, nice to meet you. Welcome back, thank you for joining us. And guys, I just have to say, I am in a major sense of relief right now because I just finished my first semester, second year at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. That means I only have one more semester to go, and it feels great. A lot of Zoom classes, but it was fun, and I just wanted to reach out and say to all the students out there who just finished their first semester in this whole Zoom world, congratulations. It really is a big thing, no matter where you're at right now, but congratulations for getting through it, because I know it is difficult. All right, guys. We got an STL first, a new segment that we're going to be trying out here and there where we reached out to you, yes, you, the STL community, to ask the guest questions. And we picked our favorite one, which was very hard, by the way. Thank you for submitting those, and keep submitting those, keep reaching out. We love to hear from you. We want this to be our show and not just my show or my team's show. This really is a show about a community. I won't go too much into detail about this next segment. You'll see it in the interview, but guys, I'm really excited for this show. And hey, if you're liking our content, if you want to see more of this, consider subscribing. Thank you so much. And Josh, you know what to do. Let's do it. Roll that. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? But please, Josh, roll that intro.
You're here with me, I'll set you free. Don't worry at all. Just wake up and don't give up. Every time you fall, roll it down, roll it down, roll it down, roll it down. The sky is the limit.
And we are back. Thank you for staying with us, STL community. Okay, this guest today, he's our first visual artist. He is a super genuine guy. He has some really, really great insight. If you're a visual artist, I know you're going to love this, but even if you're not, some great insight in the artistic world in general. I was so honored and humbled that he agreed to be on this show because he really is such an intelligent, smart guy. I think you're really going to like this episode. All right, guys, I can't wait any longer. I'd like to introduce the world to Justin Maas. All right, guys, here he is, Justin Maas. How are we doing today? How's life going for you?
Doing very well. How are you, Tristan?
Good. Thank you for being on the show. I can't wait to just dive into it.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just gonna be frank here. I don't know a lot about visual arts. I am very much in the performing arts, and you're the first person to come on here that's going to be like just a visual artist. So that's really cool. Congratulations on being the first. And so can you just tell us a little bit the main different types of visual art and kind of where your art falls within that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, visual art obviously is a blanket statement, right? It kind of encompasses everything, and it even includes some performing art, right? And it's anything visual. But traditionally, when we talk about visual art as a visual artist, we're generally talking about painting, drawing, sculpture, that kind of thing. And I mean, within that, there's lots of different subgenres, right? There's realism, there's abstract, there's any number of different things. It seems like every week there's something else that's been kind of made up. And the funny thing is that most artists don't make up these terms. It's the people looking at the art that make up the terms. So,
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, I generally will call myself a portrait artist just because that is where my interest lies. But I mean, I've done all kinds of different type of art over the years. So.
Hey, awesome. I love that. I know the saying visual art, like, can you explain it? Obviously, it's such a big term. It's just, I feel like performing art is the same thing. I can't like just be like, oh, sure. What is that? Yeah. So I totally understand that. So we actually have a new segment, the first time on this show, where we actually reached out to people watching the show, and just tried to see if they had any questions for you. And one really spoke to us. She's a fellow artist. Her name's Jaya Tawari. And Jaya, ask away.
Hi, my name is Jaya Tawari, and I'm also an artist. I paint and draw, and I take commissions and all that fun stuff. But I was wondering, what made you realize that drawing people and portraits specifically was what you wanted to do as an artist? Because I know it took me a while to figure out that kind of dogs and kind of comic book style stuff is what I really like to do.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question. I think that we all kind of gravitate towards one thing that we love. And unfortunately, as artists that are also trying to make a career, we start to push ourselves towards what we think will sell, right? So I always loved drawing people. It was always just something I liked to do when I was a kid. I used to draw superheroes and, people that I admired or whatever. And as I got older, as I went to art school and I started to build a career, I was like, okay, I have to do landscapes. I have to do cityscapes. I have to do things that people will buy. And it just happened that after a while, I said, you know what? I don't love doing this. I would rather not sell any more paintings and do what I actually love, and that is people. And the funny thing is, I made that decision probably about 10 or 12 years ago, and I still have 3 paintings of cityscapes, landscapes that are in the corner of my studio that I haven't touched since that day, because I just said, no, I'm not going to do any more. I'm only going to do what I love. So, I mean, it was always there. I always knew that I wanted to be a portrait artist. It's just, I think that you find yourself kind of pushing away and saying, okay, this maybe is what I should be doing because I need to be able to sell, I need to be able to make money and, pay my bills, sort of thing.
One of our acting teachers likes to say that technique leads to the freedom. Like it lets you be free. How important do you think, especially with portraits? Because again, I don't know a lot about it, but I feel like with a portrait, there can be this idea of perfection, or like how to get that to be like exactly the same and as the whatever the person looks like. And so
Yeah.
How do you balance technique and your personal connection and expression into that art?
So, I mean, that's really a time thing, right? That it takes a long time to develop. Technique, I would almost change the word to style. Technique, obviously, I mean, they're sort of interchangeable, but as an artist, it's more about your style. Because technique could simply mean, that you use a hatching technique, whereas your style, maybe you use a hatching technique in a certain way, right? So, one of the problems, it was funny at art school, I remember that all of our teachers, like all of them, said you need to develop a style. And that's what we heard. All of us students heard, you have to develop a style. But in actual fact, when I went back and talked to the teachers, every single one of them said, you have to develop your style, not a style. And that's actually, I mean, it doesn't sound like much of a difference, but it's actually a very, very subtle nuance that we all actually have a style within us. The way we draw or the way we paint is our style. And it takes time to bring that out and actually create something that is our own. And for those people that kind of say, oh, I'm going to develop a style, like, I like how this person works, so I'm going to try and do something based on that, it generally doesn't feel very genuine. And so I think that once you develop your style and you start to create that sort of technique and make it your own and develop it in a way, then you can start to change things in the portraiture. So it would be difficult to be an abstract portrait artist. I mean, there are some, but it's a very difficult thing, because how do you say, hey, here's this big glob of thing, and that is this person, right?
Yeah.
Who's to say that it is or isn't? So there's always a certain element of realism in portraiture. The trick is to how to apply your own technique, your own style, and create something that says more than, say, a photograph could. And I mean, my own style has been all about a certain amount of realism, but enough of the piece left sort of unfinished or partially finished. That's just because I always kind of loved that feeling and that look, but also I found that if I work that way, I can create areas of the portrait where certain parts are very finished and certain parts are not, and what that does is it leads the viewer's eyes around the piece, and creates, if I want to really focus on someone's eyes, or it sounds weird, but maybe their nose, right? There's something really interesting about the cartilage at the tip of their nose, and that'll be the focal point of the piece, and it changes how we perceive it, rather than a photograph where, even a great photographer is limited by what the camera takes, right? Whereas an artist can say, I'm going to just put a few lines in for the ear because that's not important, but I'm going to spend more time on this other part. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's so insightful and interesting, especially because I like to see all the connections between art in general, because even coming from an acting class and an acting standpoint right now, it's that's
yeah.
what we've been told a lot is we're creating a story, right? We're ours is like a more of a storytelling, and the same thing too. And
Right, yeah, of course.
yeah, and so they always say anyone can tell a story, but what does the story mean to you? And that's kind of what
Yeah.
I've been hearing, is that overall connection. And so my question is, and I think a lot of people's question, especially for younger people like myself, is, was it just a time thing to like really just truly understand yourself and your own technique, like as opposed to like say the beginning when you were first starting out and maybe you didn't know yourself as well?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of everything. As a kid, I drew constantly, and it was not even a question of whether I was going to go to art school or not. That's what I wanted to do. I think maybe a little bit in grade 11 or 12, I thought about computers, which is funny because I majored in graphic design, so a little bit of both, right?
Wow.
But I always knew that I wanted to be an artist, so the development kind of went along as it was never even in question as to whether or not that was going to develop. And there became times where, like when we had our kids, my wife and I had our kids, I didn't do a lot of work for maybe a 3 or 4 year period, right? There was maybe a couple years where I only did like 5 or 6 paintings in a year. And I look back on it now and I say, oh crap, if only I had done a bit more work then. But really, I probably wouldn't be who I am today if I had. So all of these life experiences, affect our work and changes in our work. And, you look at music, like someone like Eric Clapton, who, some of his best work, like Layla and Tears in Heaven, were all based on tragedies or unrequited love or things like that, right? So even though the pain of that is terrible, and I mean obviously I know that Clapton would rather have his child than that song, something great came out of it, right?
Yeah.
That our life experiences make us who we are. So I think it's really important to understand that you can't rush development as an artist. We all want to be that person that takes off right away, but it can take time. I was doing answering a question for a student recently about taking time as an artist, and I remember there was a woman in the New York area who didn't sell her first painting until she was 80, and I wanted to get her name, so I Googled it, and there was actually 5 famous female artists in the New York area who didn't sell their first painting until they were 80. So hopefully it doesn't take us that long, right, as artists, that we hope that we can get success by the time we're 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever. But yeah, it just, you can't rush it, unfortunately.
What would you say is the best advice to give to someone, say, that's in school right now, or who's just starting out?
I think the best advice I could give them would be that the most important thing for an artist, if we're talking about making it as an artist, to be successful as an artist, is probably focus and drive, right? So talent is important, and skills are important, imagination is important. All of these things make you what you are, but you have to understand that there will be periods where nothing goes right for days, weeks, months, years even, right? And I can think of 3 or 4 artists in my head right now who also were on the same level, getting awards every other show and stuff, and have basically hung up their paintbrushes. They don't do any more work because it got so hard and nothing was happening for them that they just said, well, I'm not interested in it anymore. And that's just such a shame, because I know that if those guys had continued, if they kept going, they would be more successful now. So yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I can say, it's just understand that success will come when it will come.
Yeah, no, definitely. There was another question that was asked in our new segment that we didn't end up
Yep.
picking, but I just feel like I need to ask it because it's just such a fun and fun question. It was by Alexander Matthews, another guest we had, who's a writer, and he asked, "Do you see people and start to sketch them right away, like when you were younger, or start to like paint them right away?"
Like in my head, you mean?
Yes. That's what he asked.
Yeah,
He's
oh
like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of funny that I will often, the weirdest places too, right? I'll be sitting in the dentist's office in the waiting room and look over and the sun hits someone from behind, and I kind of, in my head, I'm thinking what color of pastel I'd use on the, on the backlighting or whatever. Yeah, totally.
Wow.
It's a constant thing that I see things. I'll be talking to my dad or something, and the shadow will be on the side of his head, and I'll be like, oh, it's kind of neat how the form shadow, which is the shadow that's cast on an object, is lighter here than the cast shadow, which is when shadow comes from an object. And
Wow.
in my head I'll be like, I wonder if I was going to draw that, how this will come together. And then of course at that point he says to me, so what do you think? And I realize I haven't been paying attention to what he said, right? So
That's so
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned you have a book out named Drawing
Mm-hmm.
Realistic Pencil Portraits Step by Step Basic Techniques. There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
And so what inspired you to write that book?
I've always kind of enjoyed teaching art. Obviously, I've done it at different levels for a long time. I mean, even when I was in art school, I remember I got my teacher in one of the classes got me to teach perspective to the class because my dad was an architect, so I understood perspective really well, and it's a difficult thing to teach. And so I think after a couple classes of that, I thought this is kind of fun. I don't mind doing that, and so I taught. I used to teach at local colleges and things like that. Now I do some teaching online. So I've always enjoyed it. And I think at one point, years and years ago, I had talked to someone at Northlight Books, which is actually now owned by Penguin Random House. And yeah, it just happened that I think it was 3 years ago, almost to the day. It was in December, so pretty close to 3 years ago. They just approached me and said, "Hey, we've got this idea for a book. Would you be interested in putting some together?" And it was like literally 2 days before Christmas, which was kind of cool. I thought, oh, that's a neat Christmas present. But my wife is such a realist. She's like, well, until you sign a contract, don't celebrate. So
Yeah.
by January of the next year, we had it all kind of worked out. But yeah, I mean, it's just fun to be able to share the knowledge that you have and to help people succeed. People constantly, when you post things on social media, everybody's always saying nice things and comments and stuff, and that's great. I love it. It's, who doesn't love that?
Yeah.
But the ones that really touch me are the ones where they say, you inspire me, or, I've learned from your techniques, and this is how I do stuff now because I've been watching how you do it, and that's great. So yeah.
That's so amazing. Wow. One thing I like to ask to every single artist that comes on here is, just given the circumstances we're living in right now, what do you think is what's one piece of advice you have for creators and artists around the world right now during this time?
I think that at the end of the day, be true to yourself, and understand that the world's in a weird place right now. I think the important thing is to just stay true to yourself. There's certainly opportunities right now because of the way the world is to exploit things, right? To say, oh, I see all these people that like this certain thing that I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm going to do art based on it because I can sell it. Trust me that at a certain time you're going to wake up one morning and say, this is not what I'm about. So it's important to always continue to do things that you can feel comfortable with and you can feel proud of. I've never done I've done thousands of pieces that I hate, right? I always say that I have more failures than most artists have attempts, because that's really what professional artists do, is they just keep on and on and on and on. but I don't have a single piece that I've ever done that I look back on and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like, you know, I shouldn't have done this illustration. I've turned down illustrations for certain things, or business for certain, you know, advertising for certain businesses that I didn't agree with their principles. And I think that's important as an artist, and you know, it's what makes us artsy fartsy, I guess. But at the same time, it's who we are, right? You know, we have to, we all wear our emotions on our sleeves, whether we want to admit it or not. And I think it's important to stay true to that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, yeah, I think that's the thing that, especially during this time, it is so easy to struggle with, and to try to just be something, a part of something even, I think is one thing that keeps getting mentioned. So yeah, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, so I kind of like to give the last minute to the artist that comes on. Where can we find more of you? I know you got an Instagram. Everyone's gonna go follow it. And a book out now. Anything else? A Twitter? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I do have all the social media. I have Twitter, I have YouTube. I have a Patreon page, which is the site, if you're familiar with it, is more about creating patrons for yourself. But that's not what I don't want anybody to come there and just give me money. That's not what it's for. I do tutorials. There's every week I do at least one tutorial. There's normally 2 videos every week. For $5 a month, or for $5 for a month, you get access to all of them. I think there's about 60 tutorials on there now. So it's, you know, it's something that you may be interested in. If you have the book and you're interested in following up with some sort of live videos, then that definitely helps. This guy's available in North America. It should be available in most stores and online, and then in the rest of the world online. Certainly the Instagram is where I do pretty much every single day. I post at least one thing. Even some of them are reposts, but I like to kind of stay up on posting kind of as often as I can. There's normally about 4 or 5 new pieces a week. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We really,
You're most welcome.
Yeah, it's truly been a lot of fun, and I can't wait for people to see this. All right, guys, that was the end of episode 13. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed. And if you have any criticism, feedback, life advice, be sure to DM us, comment, whatever you want, because I want to hear from you guys. And remember, it's a good day to have a good day. Bye, guys. See ya. Hey, you got to the end of the video. How are we doing? All this is I really want you to subscribe. I want you to go watch our other artists on STL and let me know what you think. Please reach out to me. I want to talk to more people. Please. I love you guys. And always remember, it's a good day to have a good day.